How did you find happiness?
I think it isn't about finding happiness. It's about staying mindful about what makes you happy. And those are two different things.
There are some actors whose greatest achievement isn't becoming famous. It's knowing exactly how much of fame they were willing to accept. Hollywood has always rewarded ambition. Win a major award, and the expectation is simple. Work harder, chase bigger roles, prove you deserve the praise, and stay in the spotlight for as long as possible. Generation after generation, we've watched gifted performers spend decades trying to protect a reputation they earned in a single extraordinary moment. Goldie Hawn took a remarkably different path. Long before audiences remembered her as the warm-hearted woman who could make an entire theater laugh with a single expression, she experienced something that many actors spend a lifetime dreaming about. At just 24 years old, she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Overnight, she was no longer just a promising young performer. She'd become an Oscar winner, carrying a title that could shape every decision she made for the rest of her career. For many people, that would have been the beginning of a relentless climb toward prestige. More dramatic films, more serious roles, more attempts to convince critics that the first success wasn't an accident. But that's not the story we're telling today. Because the most fascinating part of Goldie Hawn's career isn't the award itself. It's what happened after the applause faded. Instead of allowing Hollywood to decide who she should become, she quietly built a career that reflected who she already was. She embraced comedy when others expected solemn drama. She chose happiness over constant recognition, balance over endless ambition, and eventually discovered something that many celebrated stars never seemed to find: the freedom to walk away from expectations without walking away from success. Looking back now, with the benefit of time, her journey feels less like the rise and fall of another Hollywood celebrity and more like a lesson in living well. The films are certainly important, but they are only part of a much larger story. Behind the laughter, the awards, and the box office hits was a woman making one thoughtful decision after another, often choosing the path that looked less impressive from the outside, but proved far more meaningful in the long run. And perhaps that's why, decades later, Goldie Hawn's story feels even more relevant than it did when she first stepped into the spotlight. Before movie audiences knew her name, Goldie Hawn had already spent years preparing for a career that almost no one could see. She wasn't discovered overnight, and she certainly didn't arrive in Hollywood with an Oscar already waiting for her. As a child growing up in Washington, D.C., dance became her first language of performance. Her mother owned a dance school, and from an early age, discipline was simply part of everyday life. Long rehearsals, constant practice, and learning how to communicate without saying a word gave her instincts that would later define her screen presence. Even when audiences were, every movement, every reaction had been shaped by years of training. That background wasn't immediately obvious when she joined Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In 1968. The fast-paced comedy series became one of television's biggest sensations, and Goldie Hawn quickly emerged as one of its brightest personalities. With her cheerful smile, playful energy, and effortless charm, she seemed to embody the carefree spirit of the era. Viewers adored her almost instantly. But popularity can become a kind of trap. To millions of Americans, she was the funny blonde who could light up the screen without appearing to try very hard. It was an image that opened doors, yet it also encouraged people to underestimate her. Few looked beyond the bubbly personality to notice the careful performer underneath. Hollywood has always enjoyed placing actors into comfortable categories, and Goldie Hawn appeared destined to remain there. Then came Cactus Flower. On the surface, the role seemed perfectly suited to the persona audiences already loved. Yet as the story unfolded, something unexpected happened. Beneath the humor was remarkable precision. Her comic timing felt effortless,
but the emotional moments carried genuine sincerity. She never forced the drama, and she never abandoned the comedy. Instead, she allowed the two to exist together, creating a performance that felt refreshingly natural.
The Academy noticed. In 1969, Goldie Hawn won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress at just 24 years old. It was a stunning achievement, especially for someone many still viewed as a television comedian. Suddenly, the industry looked at her differently. The question was no longer whether she had talent. The real question became far more difficult. What kind of career would she choose to build now that she had nothing left to prove so early in life? Winning an Academy Award can become both a gift and a burden. From that moment forward, every performance is measured against the one that earned the trophy. Many actors respond by chasing increasingly serious roles, hoping to convince audiences that they deserve to stand among Hollywood's dramatic elite. Goldie Hawn chose a quieter approach. Rather than abandoning the qualities that had made audiences love her, she gradually expanded them. In the Sugarland Express, Steven Spielberg's first theatrical feature, she carried the emotional weight of a story that balanced humor, desperation, and humanity. It was another reminder that respected filmmakers saw far more in her than simply a gifted comedian. The years that followed revealed the same thoughtful pattern. Whether in Butterflies Are Free or the acclaimed Shampoo, Goldie never seemed interested in reinventing herself for the sake of appearances. Instead, each role added another layer to what audiences already knew. Her characters became wiser, more emotionally complex, and more believable, while never losing the warmth that had become her signature. That evolution reached another milestone with Private Benjamin in 1980. By then, Goldie Hawn was doing more than starring in successful films. She was producing them. It was a significant shift. She was no longer waiting for Hollywood to decide what kind of stories suited her. She had begun shaping those stories herself. The film became both a commercial triumph and a critical success, proving that comedy could be intelligent, heartfelt, and enormously popular at the same time. More importantly, it gave Goldie something even greater than another hit. It gave her control. As the 1980s continued through films like Seems Like Old Times, Protocol, and Wildcats, one thing became increasingly clear. She wasn't chasing reinvention or struggling to remain fashionable. She was building a career on consistency, careful choices, and genuine confidence. In an industry that often rewards constant change, Goldie Hawn discovered that staying true to yourself could be the boldest decision of all. By the late 1980s, Goldie Hawn's greatest success was no longer measured by awards or box office numbers. It was measured by the life she had built beyond the cameras. Overboard arrived in 1987 as another light-hearted comedy. But audiences found something deeper than clever dialogue or physical humor. The unforgettable chemistry between Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell felt completely natural, because it was. Their relationship had begun years earlier, long before they became one of Hollywood's most admired couples. On screen, that trust translated into a warmth that couldn't be manufactured. Just as remarkable was the way they chose to live. Despite spending decades together and raising a family, Goldie and Kurt never felt the need to marry simply because the world expected them to. Their partnership reflected the same quiet confidence that had guided Goldie's career. She had never been interested in following Hollywood's unwritten rules if they didn't fit the life she wanted. As the 1990s arrived, her priorities became even clearer. Films like Bird on a Wire, Death Becomes Her, and The First Wives Club reminded audiences that she remained a charismatic leading lady, but there was no sense that she was desperately trying to stay at the center of attention. Instead, she became increasingly selective, allowing longer breaks between projects while devoting more time to her family and personal life. For many actors, stepping away from the spotlight feels like defeat. For Goldie Hawn, it looked more like freedom. After spending decades proving she could succeed on her own terms, she finally reached a point where success no longer depended on how often she appeared on a movie screen. Looking at Goldie Hawn's life today, it's difficult to see her story as anything other than a rare Hollywood success, not simply because of the awards, the hit films, or the decades of fame, but because of the balance she managed to create along the way. In recent years, Goldie has largely remained away from the demanding pace of Hollywood. Now in her 80s, she continues to enjoy a quieter life centered around family, health, and the causes she cares about most. Through the Hawn Foundation, she has spent years supporting programs that help children develop emotional resilience and well-being, extending her influence far beyond the entertainment industry. Her family remains one of her greatest accomplishments. Daughter Kate Hudson became a major movie star in her own right, while son Oliver Hudson built a successful acting career in television and film. Goldie is also a proud grandmother, and by all accounts, family has become the true center of her life. She and Kurt Russell remain one of Hollywood's most enduring couples. More than 4 decades after their relationship began, they are still together, dividing their time between homes in places such as Colorado and California, enjoying a life that has never depended on publicity to feel meaningful. Perhaps that's the final lesson of Goldie Hawn's story. She didn't disappear. She simply reached a point where she no longer needed the spotlight to confirm her worth. In an industry filled with people chasing more, Goldie Hawn found something far rarer: knowing when enough was enough, and being genuinely happy because of it.